Talk shows have always been known for their laid-back interviews, improvised jokes, and fun encounters between celebrities. These programs usually provide light and funny moments for the audience. However, since many of these conversations happen live or with little scripting, not everything always goes as planned. Sometimes, a simple question turns into an unexpected argument, a guest makes a comment that's a little too bold, a host crosses the line with the jokes, or even some accident happens on stage. In just a few seconds, what was supposed to be just another interview turns into an awkward moment in front of the cameras, leaving the audience unsure whether to laugh or stay silent. In 2017, during an interview on the show The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, actress Kristen Stewart had a curious moment alongside the host. At the time, Stewart was on the program to promote the film Personal Shopper. During the conversation, Colbert noticed that the necklace the actress was wearing was touching the microphone clipped to her clothing, which could interfere with the interview audio. Spontaneously, and trying to fix the situation on the spot, the host leaned toward the actress and touched her necklace to adjust it. The gesture ended up creating a slightly awkward moment on stage, since Colbert had to get quite close to Stewart to move the accessory. Right after doing that, he himself joked about the situation and commented that it was getting too intimate. The actress seemed a bit surprised by the host's boldness and reacted with some embarrassment, even commenting that he had been quite bold to do that. Next, still in a very good-humored way, Stewart decided to remove the necklaces she was wearing, saying that this way she would avoid any other problem with the microphone. A very unusual moment on television happened on October 23, 1996, when director Abel Ferrara appeared on the talk show Late Night with Conan O'Brien. The interview ended up becoming one of the strangest and most chaotic appearances in the show's history, mainly because Ferrara seemed to be under the influence of alcohol during the recording. Even before he came on stage, the situation was already complicated backstage. Years later, Conan himself said that the director simply tried to run away from the studio shortly before the interview began, leaving the NBC building and going out onto the street. A producer from the show had to run after him and convince him to come back to fulfill the scheduled appearance. When he finally showed up on stage, Ferrara's behavior drew attention immediately. He came in smoking, spoke in a confused way, seemed uninterested in the questions, and, at various moments, mumbled answers or changed the subject, leaving the host visibly uncomfortable and trying to save the interview. In addition, he gestured a lot, covered his face, and seemed to have difficulty maintaining a coherent conversation, which reinforced the impression that he was drunk. Conan even made jokes in the middle of the interview to lighten the mood and try to steer the dialogue, including joking about a supposed sobriety test. Even so, the conversation stayed strange from beginning to end. Oscar-winning actress Shirley MacLaine starred in one of the tensest moments in talk show history when she appeared on Late Night with David Letterman on October 4th, 1988, hosted by David Letterman. She was on the show mainly to promote her film, Madame Suzatska, but the interview quickly took an uncomfortable turn. Right at the beginning, Letterman started making jokes about MacLaine's spiritual beliefs, especially her ideas about reincarnation and past lives, topics she had explored in autobiographical books. The host insinuated in a joking tone that she had already been on that show in another life, and kept pressing on with ironic questions about her supposed past lives. MacLaine clearly didn't like where the conversation was going.
How many other lives have you had?
Who knows? I don't know.
Well,
however many you want. However many you want to remember.
She tried several times to steer the subject back to her work and to the film she was promoting, but Letterman kept returning to jokes about mysticism and reincarnation. Visibly irritated, the actress even responded with sarcasm and frustration, saying he had a lot of karma to work out. The situation became even more tense when, after a commercial break, Letterman returned to the same topic. Already impatient, MacLaine fired off a line that would become famous in TV history. "Maybe Cher was right, maybe you're an idiot." The phrase was partially censored by the broadcaster, but the atmosphere in the studio became extremely awkward. Letterman asked why she had said that, and the actress replied that she thought it was just a funny comment. The rest of the interview continued in an uncomfortable way. At one point, MacLaine even touched Letterman's head, saying she could give him a kind of meditation, which left the host even more bewildered. Shortly after, he abruptly ended the conversation and went to a commercial break. When the show came back, the actress was no longer on the stage. In 2007, child actress Abigail Breslin appeared on the talk show hosted by Conan O'Brien and ended up starring in a very curious and unexpected moment that left the host visibly surprised. At the time, Breslin was still very young, but she was already quite well known for her roles in films such as Little Miss Sunshine, which had been hugely successful and had earned her major prominence in Hollywood. During the interview on the program Late Night with Conan O'Brien, the conversation was unfolding in a relaxed way when, suddenly, Abigail decided to show a bit of her musical skills. She asked the host if he knew the singer Kelly Clarkson. He said yes, since she had been on the show previously, and then the young girl began to sing excerpts from the song Since You've Been Gone, one of the singer's hits. The moment ended up becoming awkward and, at the same time, funny, because the performance came completely out of nowhere. Conan, who normally controls the pace of the interview, was clearly unsure how to react for a few seconds while the young actress sang with plenty of enthusiasm. Despite the somewhat unexpected vibe, the situation ended up being taken in stride and became one of those spontaneous talk show moments that later go viral on the internet precisely because of the naturalness and the amusing awkwardness they cause.
You know Kelly Clarkson?
Of course, she's been here,
Well,
yeah.
I can breathe for the first
time. I'm still moving on. Yeah, yeah.
One of the most famous and embarrassing moments in talk show history happened in 2010 when comedian Jimmy Kimmel appeared as a guest on The Jay Leno Show, hosted by Jay Leno. The interview became notorious because Kimmel decided to attack Leno directly during the conversation, in a scene that went viral and went down in television history. The context behind the tension was a major controversy that had taken place on American television at the time. In 2009, Leno had stepped down from hosting The Tonight Show, handing the spot to Conan O'Brien. However, just a few months later, the network NBC decided to bring Leno back to the show's traditional time slot, which ended up forcing O'Brien out. The decision generated enormous repercussions and a lot of criticism within the entertainment industry, and Kimmel was one of those who publicly defended Conan. When he was invited to take part in the 10 at 10 segment on Leno's show, Kimmel surprised the host by turning the interview into a string of jokes aimed at him. In one of the most famous moments, Leno asked what the best prank Kimmel had ever pulled was. Without hesitating, the comedian replied that the best prank was telling someone you would give them your show in 5 years, and, when the 5 years arrived, simply taking the show back almost immediately. A clear reference to what had happened to Conan O'Brien. Another curious moment involving talk show interviews happened on April 7th, 2005, when actress Fran Drescher appeared on Conan O'Brien's Late Night, where the appearance was marked by an unexpected and quite bold statement made by the actress during the conversation. During the interview, Drescher chatted with Conan in a relaxed way about relationships and about the kind of man that usually caught her attention. At a certain point, the subject ended up reaching the common idea that many women are interested in the size of a man's wallet, that is, the amount of money he has. That was when the actress made a provocative joke saying that, in her case, she didn't worry about the size of the wallet, but rather about the size of something else, if you know what I mean.
I always prided myself on the fact that I never really judged a man by the size of his wallet. Much more important for me, the size of his...
The line caught the host by surprise and drew laughs from the audience, creating one of those spontaneous and slightly awkward moments that sometimes happen in live interviews. Conan reacted with his typical humor, trying to keep the tone of the conversation light, while the audience kept laughing at the boldness of the remark. One of the most controversial moments ever shown on a talk show happened in 2007 on Jimmy Kimmel Live, when businesswoman Ivanka Trump appeared on the program alongside actor and comedian Andy Dick, with both being interviewed by host Jimmy Kimmel. The episode ended up becoming extremely controversial because Dick began acting in an invasive and inappropriate manner during the live interview. Right at the start of the conversation, Dick began repeatedly touching Ivanka's legs, apparently trying to justify the gesture by saying he was curious about the shine he saw on them. The businesswoman tried to push his hand away and reacted uncomfortably, while Kimmel also intervened several times, asking him to stop. At one point, the host even warned him directly, saying, "Andy, please don't touch Ivanka. Donald Trump is going to kill us," in an attempt to turn the situation into a joke and at the same time make him stop. Donald Trump, today the President of the United States, is her father. Even after the warnings, Dick continued with the inappropriate behavior, going so far as to grab Ivanka's arm and make suggestive offensive comments, including a request for a wet kiss. The situation quickly got out of control, and Kimmel had to stand up and physically intervene to pull him away. Shortly after, with the help of studio security, the actor was removed from the stage while the interview was still happening. Later, Kimmel himself commented on the episode in interviews, stating that the comedian seemed to be a little out of it during the taping. He also reported that Dick had already shown strange behavior backstage before going on stage. Over the years, the video of the incident resurfaced online and went viral multiple times, especially when Dick was involved in other controversies. In April 2022, the singer Melody appeared on the Brazilian talk show The Noite com Danilo Gentili, aired by SBT and hosted by the comedian Danilo Gentili. During the interview, the two shared a very provocative and good-humored moment that quickly caught the public's attention and ended up going viral on social media. While they talked about the young singer's career and her success on the internet, Melody began highlighting the impressive numbers her songs had on digital platforms. She stated that some of her music videos had already surpassed hundreds of millions of views and took the opportunity to tease the host, saying that he had never reached numbers that high on his videos. The tease sparked a fun back and forth between the two as they tried to decide who was more famous. Gentili replied that the comparison did not make much sense, since he was not a singer and music videos usually get far more views because fans watch them multiple times, while interviews are normally watched only once. Even so, Melody kept insisting that her numbers were bigger, and even pointed out that the show had already had international celebrities and still had not reached figures as high as those of her music videos. The exchange of teasing continued for a few minutes, with both of them disputing who had more relevance or popularity. Audience reacted with laughter, while Gentili tried to push back against the singer's claims, creating an atmosphere of humorous competition between interviewer and guest. Over time, the clip from the interview began circulating again on social media and went viral once more. After the repercussion, Melody herself explained that the argument was not a real fight, but rather a prank previously agreed upon to make the interview more fun and generate entertainment for the public. A very fun and embarrassing moment on television happened in 2017, when actors Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart took part together on The Ellen DeGeneres Show, hosted by Ellen DeGeneres. The duo was on the talk show to promote the film Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle, but the interview ended up turning into a fun exchange of jabs between the two friends. During the conversation, Ellen brought up old photos from the guests' teenage years. First, a photo of Dwayne Johnson when he was young was shown, in which he appeared with a look quite different from his current one. Kevin Hart immediately started laughing and made jokes about his friend's appearance, saying he looked like a detective who was also a DJ. The audience reacted with lots of laughter while Johnson pretended to be embarrassed by the image. However, Johnson was already prepared to get revenge for the teasing. Soon after, he revealed that he had also brought an old photo of Kevin Hart to show the audience. When the image appeared on the studio screen, it showed Hart still a teenager, posing in a somewhat awkward way, and very different from the confident comedian the audience knew. The reaction was immediate. The audience burst into laughter, and Hart himself was visibly embarrassed to see his old photo shown to millions of people. From there, Johnson kept joking with his friend, mimicking the strange pose Hart struck in the photo and mocking the comedian's short stature. The exchange of jabs showed the famous friendship between the two actors, who frequently make jokes about each other in interviews and on social media. In August of 1998, actress Halle Berry took part in the traditional talk show The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, hosted by Jay Leno, a few days before turning 32 years old. The interview, which initially followed the relaxed tone typical of the program, ended up generating a very awkward moment that became memorable among talk show fans. On the occasion, Halle Berry appeared in the studio wearing an elegant purple dress with a relatively eye-catching neckline. During the conversation, she mentioned the outfit casually, commenting on the look chosen for that night. However, while talking about the dress, Jay Leno immediately directed attention to the actress's neckline and pointed to her bust area while making comments and jokes about the piece. The attitude drew a lot of attention from the audience present in the studio because the host began highlighting precisely the most revealing part of the outfit. Berry reacted with an embarrassed smile and tried to compose herself, discreetly tugging the dress to keep the neckline from drawing even more attention. The atmosphere on stage became momentarily awkward since the actress seemed surprised by the host's direct comment. Moments like this unfortunately were relatively common in talk show interviews in the 1990s, when hosts often made bolder or more provocative comments to celebrities. In similar cases, such as other interviews with Berry on the program, Jay Leno himself even openly showed that he got distracted by the actress's more revealing dresses. A very unusual moment on Brazilian television happened in 2011 during an episode of Programa de Jitija, when the host Jô Soares was interviewing the advertising professional and comedian Antonio Tabet, creator of the website Que Beloco. During the chat, something unexpected happened in the studio and ended up becoming one of the most remembered falls in the history of talk shows in Brazil. While talking with the guests, Joe began to realize that there was something wrong with the chair he was sitting on. The host commented live that it felt strange and even said that he had almost fallen twice, drawing the production team's attention to check the problem. An employee came into the studio and crouched beside the chair to try to fix one of the casters that seemed to be loose or broken. At the moment when Joe turned to speak to the employee and observe what was happening, the chair ended up giving way completely. The host simply lost his balance and disappeared behind the desk, falling to the floor in front of the audience and the interviewee himself. The scare was immediate, but it soon turned into laughter, since Joe quickly showed that he was fine.
Eu acho que quebrou.
Right after the fall, the show's waiter Alex ran to help him get up. Even after the tumble, Joe kept his characteristic good humor and even joked about the situation. When he noticed that Antonio Tabet was trying to record the moment, he still cracked a joke saying that it was forbidden to take photographs. Then, the production brought a new chair to replace the one that had broken, and the interview continued normally. Paris Hilton's interview on The Late Show with David Letterman, hosted by David Letterman, became known as one of the most tense and talked about moments in the recent history of talk shows. The appearance took place in the late 2000s, when Hilton was at the center of media attention after several scandals and her brief time in jail, something that ended up dominating the interview. Right at the start of the conversation, Letterman began asking questions about the period Paris had spent in jail for violating probation after driving with a suspended license. The problem is that, according to what Hilton herself later revealed, there had been a prior agreement that this subject would not be brought up during the interview, since she was on the program mainly to promote her projects and a perfume. Even so, the host kept returning to the topic repeatedly, asking questions about what life in prison was like, whether she had made friends there, and even about her food during that period. As the interview moved along, it became clear that the situation was becoming uncomfortable. Paris tried to respond politely at first, but later started saying that she would rather not talk about the subject anymore and that she had already moved on. Even so, Letterman kept pressing with the questions and turning the topic into jokes for the audience, which created an atmosphere of embarrassment in the studio. Years later, Hilton revealed that at that moment she felt humiliated and stated that it seemed like the host was trying to embarrass her on purpose in front of the audience. She said that during the commercial breaks, she even directly asked him to stop bringing up the subject, but when the cameras started recording again, the questions came back as well. According to Paris herself, at the end of the taping, she told Letterman that she would never return to the show because he had crossed a line. Later, the host apologized and even sent her a gift as a way of making amends. In a subsequent appearance on the show, he also apologized publicly, acknowledging that he had pushed the topic too far. Don't forget to subscribe to watch more videos like this.